I am thrilled to introduce you to our guests. Aaron Marquez, a veteran of multiple political campaigns and the United States Army, grew up in Arizona, served our country through 2 deployments to Afghanistan, and has fought for progressive change in Arizona and nationwide. In 2020, voters elected Aaron to the at-large seat of the Phoenix Union High School District Governing Board, where he has been fighting for progressive change to improve local public schools for our students and their families. In the State House, Aaron will fight to repeal universal vouchers for private schools, draining funding from our public school districts, and he will fight to protect abortion rights. Emily Cherniack is founder and executive director of New Politics, which she founded in 2013 to recruit and support military and national service programs alumni to run for political office, and New Politics Leadership Academy. Previously, she served on the campaign staff of Alan Casey, a U.S. Senate candidate for Massachusetts, who was her boss at City Year Boston. Cherniack also spent 4 years at Be the Change as chief of staff, and before that, organizing director. At City Year Boston, she was service director and a program manager. And in 2018, Emily was named to the Politico 50 as one of the 50 thinkers, doers, and dreamers driving politics. And so with that, I welcome to BigTent, Aaron and Emily.
Thanks, Gail. I'm going to take you on the road with me. You can just, introduce me everywhere. And thank you, Sue and Kitty. It's just an honor to be here. And so I'm going to quickly show a sort of presentation. I'll go through it, it won't take forever. And then I'm going to kick it over to the amazing Aaron Marquez to talk a little bit about sort of Arizona and what's going on there. And then we'll open up for Q&A. So let me share. Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna put this in, whoops, let's see, display, full screen mode. Okay. Can you guys see that? We good? Okay. So New Politics is the organization I founded, and our goal is to sort of, identify and launch a new class of leaders in public office called servant leaders. And these are leaders much like we have the same country over party, right? We're country first, community first. So BigTent, and we have the same sort of narrative and messaging. Because we know democracy is at risk, and you all know this better than anyone. And we believe that it's one of the things that we need to change is the kind of leaders that we have. And so we know our faith in government is at an all-time low right now. And so our goal is to build a better bench. We're really about the pipeline. So city council, state leg, Congress. If you look at data, half of Congress comes from the state legislature. So there's like a real pipeline for political leadership. Kamala Harris was first a district attorney, right? Joe Biden ran for city council. So everyone starts somewhere. And so that's our goal, is building a bench nationwide for future leaders that become national leaders. And we're really about leadership and talent. So we're not about issue focus. We don't have like a policy litmus test, other than, they have to like believe in climate change, and they can't be, they have to certain things like human rights and basic rights they have to believe in. But we don't have sort of like a education litmus test or things like that. We're about leadership and talent. And we really vet candidates on those things. We do our due diligence and their track record of how do they get things done, and how do they bring people together towards a mission larger than themselves. That is the most important thing to us, is how are they showing up as leaders in the world. And we're really, problem solving, right? Like you all, you guys all focus on this too. And I think the way to describe us is we're like a talent agency and a campaign accelerator. And we've, about 400 campaigns in the last 10 years, and we've won over 200 races. And this is kind of how we work. We recruit, we help sort of train and incubate, meaning like we help build up a campaign. So we help hire the campaign manager, we help bring the consultants to the table. We help navigate the world of how do you write a stump speech? How do you do call time? How do you, what does a finance director do? Do you have resumes, right? So all the things that are kind of operationally needed to get a campaign up and running, we really help do and advise. And then we help them get elected. And then the other thing we do is once they're elected, they need help hiring their team. They need help navigating the political space, who are allies, who are not. And we're really sort of a trusted advisor and helping just set them up for success is our main goal. And this sort of Venn diagram, which I would credit to Dan Helmer, who is now a state delegate in Virginia, ran for Congress, but he has on the side of consulting firms that did this project for us and really found that this is kind of our sweet spot. Is we're very different. Like family that are around candidates are really well-intentioned, well-meaning, but they know nothing about campaigns and politics. And then you have sort of consultants they know a lot about campaigns and politics, but they're not free, B, like don't have the best interest of the candidate always because there's incentives. Media consultants get paid 12% on the media ads. So they have self-interest in recommending things that maybe are not in alignment with what is best for the candidate or the campaign.
Hey, Emily, quick question. Your slide deck isn't changing. Is that okay? Or were you changing the slide?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Oh, I don't see it changing. Oh, there we go.
Maybe I'll put it, sorry, let me just take it back quick because, okay, that was weird. It was not changing in this mode. Okay, so.
Yeah.
My bad. Thank you for saying that. All right.
Yeah.
So here we are, leadership and talent, problem solving, talent accelerator. Here are the 5 steps that we do. Like I said, recruit, train, incubate, elect, and advise. And advise is sort of once they get elected, we help hire like their teams and help take them through the process around that, etc. And then this Venn diagram is sort of how I would describe us visually, compared to family members or consultants. Like people are like, what do you do in new politics? Like, how are you different than the other people that are out there helping, work with candidates? And so that's sort of how I would say is what we do. And then we're really about quality over quantity. Like we're about high performing talent. Like we're not like, oh, we have 1,000 candidates. Like that's not what our goal is. We're about the truly game changing. I talk about like the Michael Jordans of the industry, right? Like who are those people? And that's who we work with. So many of you know Abigail Spanberger, Joe Tate, who's now Speaker of the House of Michigan. We helped elect him in 2018. Alyssa Slotkin, as you all know, is now running for the Senate. We helped her in 2018. Here's our congressional cohort, are these leaders. We are bipartisan. But we are very anti-Trump. And so we had 2 Republicans that are now no longer Mike Gallagher and Peter Meyer. Peter Meyer got taken out in a primary last cycle and Mike just retired. He just couldn't honestly take the toxic culture of the Republican Party right now. So we are hopeful that we will get new Republicans in a post-Trump era. And then we're trying to scale our impact. We're in 39 states. We run 150 campaigns. Sorry for the formatting there. And that's a 53% growth from where we were like just 2 cycles ago. And our goal is to get to like 300 campaigns every cycle is kind of our goal for the next couple of years. And that's where we are right now and going in 2028. And we sort of looked at the numbers, like it takes us we don't give hard money to candidates, but sort of our investment as like human staff capital, right? What we do, it's about $30,000 per congressional candidate, $10,000 per down ballot. And that is leveraging, a congressional campaign raises a couple $1 million. They oversee 1 million people, and they have access to billions of dollars in federal money, right? So our 30 grand that gets someone elected is a pretty good ROI in Congress, and 10 grand a pretty good ROI for state ledge. And really our vision one day is like every elected official and every decision they make will start with the question of what is best for the country. And that is why we do the work we do. And that's kind of how we vet people. And so just 2 quick case studies. So Rodney Hall, who is a Republican, we helped him win. He was the first African-American Republican elected in Mississippi since the Reconstruction era. And his first thing he did was propose. So in Mississippi, you can't do ballot initiatives, which are very key for like democracy reform stuff. And it was not allowed in Mississippi. So he proposed to bring back ballot initiatives, which passed the House. It's still kind of in the Senate, but But the first thing he did was make sure that we could have access to, you know, ballot initiatives in Mississippi, which would change how we could get legislation passed there. And then James Talarico, who, if you have not seen him on viral TikTok, he is a future Texas statewide candidate one day. He's really incredible. We helped him run for the state house in 2018. He was named one of the most effective lawmakers in Texas, and he's only 35. He has gone viral on TikTok because he sort of talks about the evangelical right. He's a preacher, ordained minister, and has a really great narrative around the evangelical right. There's nothing Christian about the evangelical right, and he kind of goes through this whole thing on that. So you guys should check him out. But he will one day, and I will say this year, run for lieutenant governor or governor of Texas, and I think he really could win. And he's truly amazing. So again, it's not about quantity for us. We're about quality and people who can make a real difference in the lives of the country as political leaders. And so I'm really excited, and I'll stop sharing, that Aaron Marquez is here, who I've known Aaron since he was 19 years old when we were in city year. And he's just had an incredible journey. He's someone that, you know, I'm glad he's in politics. He should be in politics. And, you know, we've been with him since the early days of his political journey. So I'll kick it over to him. He's now, well, you're not technically a full state rep yet. I mean, you don't really have a general election because it's like a safe Dem seat. So Aaron is now about to be officially, he's won the primary, but he's a state rep and will be officially a state rep on November 5th. So kick it over to you, Aaron.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. And, you know, happy to be here with Emily. As she mentioned, I have known her for over 20 years, since I was 19 years old. I'm a post 9/11 Army veteran, but I also like to say I'm a post 9/11 AmeriCorps alum, National Service alum. You know, I was a freshman in college when 9/11 happened. And, you know, something about that day triggered in me a desire to serve the country. And I started talking to Army recruiters, but during the middle of all that, I discovered City Year, National Service AmeriCorps program, and ended up moving from Arizona to Boston, Massachusetts, and worked in inner city schools, running after school programs and service learning programs for middle school students. And that's where I met Emily. And, you know, one of the things that City Year talks about, and I think it's so important to highlight national service alumni on the same pedestal that, you know, sometimes post 9/11 veterans, we get put on a pedestal because of our service. But I think whether you're in AmeriCorps or Teach for America or the Peace Corps, it's important for people that have served the country to think about a career or, you know, running for office at some point in their lives. But one of the things City Year always talked about was your justice nerve. Once you see an injustice, it's hard to turn that off, and you have a responsibility to do something about it. So both, you know, Emily are you know, worked with Alan Casey. He's somebody I consider a mentor. That's something that he said all of the time. And so for me, you know, I think that justice nerve started, you know, me thinking about education inequity in the country because of the work that I saw working in inner city schools in Boston and seeing, you know, neighborhoods that were very, you know, segregated in a different way than we see in suburban Arizona and inner city Phoenix. It woke me up to this idea of education inequity in the country, and I've become a strong supporter of national service at the federal level and state level, trying to get more people to do something to serve the country. I remember at that time, you know, there was, you know, talk about my generation, the millennial generation, not really being interested, sort of being a me first generation. But I think at the same time, that wasn't ever really true at all. I think my generation, in a lot of ways, has been turned off from politics and political service. And they preferred to do things like community service. And I think the incredible thing that Emily's organization does is she finds these national service alumni or AmeriCorps alumni and Army veterans from all walks of life, and helps them find a way to think about running for office and a way to think about it as a continuation of their service, whether it started out in the military or it started out through something like AmeriCorps. So after my 2 years of AmeriCorps, I did go back to college. I finished college in 2008, but I did feel like 9/11 was that sort of event in my life that got me to think about service. And I felt like at that point, I had seen so many people I went to high school with and college with join the military, and some of them didn't come home. And I felt like I had a generational responsibility to serve the country in that way too. So I've been in the Army Reserve now for over 15 years, since 2009. I'm currently a major in the Army Reserve. I went to Afghanistan twice. When I came home from Afghanistan in 2012, I thought I was ready to take my next step in national service and enter the political arena. And Emily was right there again to help me run for office the first time 10 years ago in 2014. I ran for state senate. Like most first-time candidates, I did not win. I lost. But I couldn't have done it without Emily and the team at New Politics 10 years ago. I still continue to serve in the Army Reserve and ended up back in Afghanistan in 2016. And I think my deployment in 2016, I tell people I was there during the end of the Obama administration and the beginning of the Trump administration. I was there the night that Hillary Clinton lost in November of 2016. And now we're just 50 days away, 49 days away, 48 days away from this election. I ask people to think about, where were you in November of 2016? And could you have done something else during the last 50 days of that election to make a difference? Because that election really did come down to the wire. We all know she won the popular vote. And races in Arizona just 4 years ago, we had a statewide attorney general race that came down to less than 400 votes. 4 years ago, Joe Biden won Arizona by less than 10,000 votes. This year, just July 30th, we had a congressional primary that came down to 39 votes. So races in Arizona are really, really close. It really matters what any of you can do from all over the country in these battleground states, whether it's sending postcards, text messages, phone banking, take a fall vacation to a place like Arizona. If you're willing to come out and knock on doors with us, it's so, so important. I was knocking on doors Sunday, and at this point in the campaign, I'd spent 6 months knocking on doors to the most Democratic voters, because I have to win a Democratic primary in my district. And then I'm now in a pretty safe position. But I went out knocking on doors this weekend. We're doing GOTV. I went out knocking on doors the weekend before, and we're working in our swing districts, trying to help us get a Democratic majority in the state house and the state senate. We're just 2 seats away in both chambers. And this weekend, I knocked on the door of another veteran, and he wasn't on my list. I had a list of his 2 daughters in their 20s that were registered Democratic. And right away, this dad did not want to speak with me. He said, we're not about the Democrats. You can't speak with my daughters, and pretty much slammed the door in my face. So this phase of door knocking it gets a lot harder, because we're speaking to the people that haven't shown up and voted, or we're speaking to the people that we have to persuade to think about voting our values. And for me, those align with the Democratic Party and align with protecting our democracy and women's rights and public schools. But this dad who answered the door, he came and tracked me down 1 street over. I was already knocking on the next street, and he came to apologize. He said, "I'm sorry, I just found out, my aunt has cancer. I shouldn't have responded that way." And I said, "Hey, thank you for doing that." He said, "I'm part of the VFW. I know you said you were a veteran. I'd love to have you come speak to our group." And I said, "Hey, that means a lot to me, because at the end of the day, when I was in Afghanistan and wherever you were deployed, it didn't matter who was to the left or to the right of us. The only thing that mattered is that we're all Americans. We're all on the same team." And as divisive as our politics has become in the last 8 years, I think it's so important that we remind people of that. And I think that's, part of what the work is at New Politics, is that we can work across the aisle, across partisan lines of difference, to figure out how to get things done for the country. And I think getting things done for the country is something that happens in City Year, Teach for America, the Peace Corps, the Army, the Marines, the Navy. If people have served their country, I think we can find a way to get things done for the country. So I'm running now for state representative in Arizona. As Gail had mentioned earlier, the top priorities for me in this election are protecting public schools. I'm a school board member currently of the largest high school district in Arizona. Just a few years ago, before we had a Democratic governor, the Republicans in the legislature passed universal vouchers. Regardless of any income, anybody can take $8,000 and send it as a private school subsidy. And what we've seen in the few years that it's been in place is that over 70% of the families that are using the private school vouchers were already in private school and could already afford a private school. We also see, because of Trump's work at the U.S. Supreme Court level, Arizona reverted back to a pre-Civil War abortion ban in our state. So right now, our campaign is focused on passing a statewide constitutional amendment through ballot initiative to protect abortion rights as a constitutional right in Arizona. That's on the ballot here. But even if that passes, in the legislature, we've seen in other conservative states, Republicans go after contraception, and we've seen them go after IVF. So there's a lot of work to do in the legislature. I'm 41 years old, and in my lifetime, we've never had a Democratic majority in the state house or the state Senate. We do have a Democratic governor. I'm good friends with Ruben Gallego. I feel very good about our chances to win statewide here in Arizona, but the way they've gerrymandered the state, it makes it really hard to flip the state house and the state Senate, but we are 2 seats away. Since Vice President Harris has gotten into the race, we've seen polling that shows that some of our swing district state house and state Senate candidates are very much in striking distance. And these are in rural Arizona places like Pinal County or Casa Grande as you drive from Phoenix to Tucson. We're trying to flip seats there. And then we're trying to flip seats in the Phoenix suburbs and exurbs in places like Chandler, Paradise Valley, and North Phoenix, going into places like Anthem, Arizona, on your way to Flagstaff. So we're really close. And like I said before, we've seen elections in Arizona come down to 39 votes. We've seen them come down to less than 400 votes. And Joe Biden just won Arizona by less than 10,000 votes just 4 years ago. So anything you all can do to send some support to Arizona, we very much need it. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say the future of our democracy needs it. So thank you so much for having me here today.
So thank you, Aaron. And we'll kick it back to Kitty. Do you want to do the Q&A portion?
Yes, great. Thank you so much to both of you. I'd love to just sort of, since we've got both of you here, you can sort of just tell us what that partnership between New Politics and a candidate is like on the ground and throughout a campaign. I know you haven't won your seat yet, Aaron. So let's maybe just focus on the campaign structure that you provide, Emily, for a candidate like Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, and even from Aaron's first race, at that point it was just me. Like we have a team, but it was just me in the baby stages. But so every candidate gets a campaign advisor, and a campaign advisor is like the point person on call, emergency room, doctor style. Like you can call anytime and help navigate. Like, let's find resumes for your campaign manager. What mail firm is good? Like, talk to a few of them. Let's decide what's the best fit for you. Let's talk about your fundraising plan. Let's talk about what's your messaging, and then, kind of help facilitate in a process to get a candidate up and running. What website do you need? And Aaron had run before, so this time, he it was less sort of intensive in the startup space, but generally that is kind of how it works, and being on the calls, the weekly calls of the team, and troubleshooting, and sometimes campaign staff needs coaching and development. When Aaron's campaign manager, was an intern with us, and we continue to coach and develop her as she is now in another campaign. So yeah, we're just here as trusted advisors and really helping in any way possible. There's really nothing we don't do, and so it really just depends on what the campaign needs. But those are some of the things that we have done with Aaron in his races.
Yeah, I think Emily's Venn diagram does a pretty good job of describing the value add to candidates. I tell every first time candidate I meet, the hardest thing about being a candidate is distinguishing between good advice and bad advice, and people that are trying to flatter you, and people that are see you as a way to raise money or make money for themselves. And during my first campaign, this was sort of like the pre-digital era. We raised a lot of money, more than any first-time candidate in Arizona had ever raised, and we sent 18 pieces of mail. And I'm still pretty close with the folks that were my mail consultants, but probably that was too much mail that we spent during that campaign. And I think I think looking back on that race, there was probably some structural things about the person I decided to run against that made it just really hard to run. But I think that for first-time candidates, you have a lot of people telling you that you're the person that's, can win this unwinnable race. And you're the best thing since sliced bread. And, a lot of those people just want to make money off of you. And they're not always giving you the best advice possible. I think Emily's team and Emily herself, have given me a lot of really good advice that I don't think candidates can find anywhere else.
Great, thank you. Emily, let's start at the beginning. 2014, there was one of you when you started. You've grown significantly over the past 10 years, and to go from 1 to 475 is quite a lot, and you've raised money. So sort of talk to us, like, how do you use what you've learned to sort of impact the organization you are now, and how do you allocate your funds in a way that helps you grow sustainably but support the program that you currently have? Because that's a lot.
Yeah. So that's a multi question there. So
Yeah, sorry.
in scaling, I scaled slowly. Like, I've been doing this for over 10 years. And I think sometimes when people scale really quickly, I just think you can make a lot of mistakes. So I grew really slowly, actually. And I myself had to learn and test the model, like even in 2014. Like, I mean, Aaron, I can't believe we 18 mail pieces. Like, I forgot about that. And I was like, oh God, oh my God. Now I would know. I didn't know what I didn't know back then. So I had to sort of Alan Casey always said, become an expert in the thing you're trying to do. And so I had to first become an expert in campaigning. And I started campaigning in 2009, but it took me years to kind of learn enough to know what I know. And I'm still learning, but that I had to do first. And then we started out, we scaled. And then the next thing we built was a recruitment program, the leadership development training we do. Aaron knows Max Clow, who was at City Year, who I recruited to build this leadership development program that no one else does in politics. And then we created the academy, which, we have several thousand alumni that have gone through our programming who are kind of in the pipeline for political leadership in some capacity. And then we kind of grew the candidate space. We have a team of campaign advisors. There's 5 of them now who have a portfolio of candidates. We've sort of figured out what their capacity is, how many they can take in a kind of chunk. And we've really been continuing to kind of develop and coach and train everyone on our team. We have 17 people on our team now, and that's divided between recruiting, developing programs for future servant leaders in whatever capacity. They run for office, work on campaigns, want to work in government, just want to be a volunteer, right? Everyone can play a role. And then our advisors are the candidate track, and so candidates, and then our comm shop, which is helping candidates with their stuff and sort of telling the message and brand of the organization. So all of that is to say, I learn every day. I make mistakes every day, and I just try to keep having a growth mindset. If you've ever read the book by Carol Dweck, a growth mindset's really important in this space. So yeah.
How do you guys go about recruiting your candidates? Where do you go? What's kind of conversation you have? I'm sure other candidates are great. I'm guessing other candidates who you've run are great recruiters as well.
Yes. Although I will say, and I say this with love, sometimes they don't always tell they rewrite the story of how they ran. So Seth Moulton, for example, was telling a candidate once, and I happened to be in the room with him. He's like, you don't have to start running till February of election year. And I was like, and I'm in the background being like, that is the worst, stop talking. And he kind of looked at me and be like, well, actually, maybe you should start earlier, but I'll let Emily, I'll pass the phone. You know what I mean? I was like, what are you saying? Sometimes they forget how they got elected. So yes, they're great at being excitable and telling someone they should run, but less about political strategists. Yeah. We're like an HR firm or a political recruiting firm. We get a lot of referrals. We source, we're about partner orgs. We'll kind of recommend people and send them our way. And so it's a lot of different, it takes a lot to recruit someone to run, to get them to yes, to sort of get them from the first conversation to yes, can take time.
So once election day 2024 is over, you start to think about your bench there's elections obviously in 23 and in 24.
Yeah, we're already recruiting for 2025. We have a
Okay.
director of talent.
I mean, 25,
that is,
25.
Yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
a director of talent whose job is to sort of be full-time thinking about our bench, our pipeline, and, you know, getting people ready for 2025. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then obviously at the beginning of the call, you emphasized the fact that you are pro-democracy. That's sort of one of your the bars that you set for the people that you recruit, like BigTent. So it's hard to ensure that they would prioritize democracy over personal interest once they were in office. But how are you managing that sort of North Star for your candidates and those who get elected?
Yeah, I mean, we really get to know them through the process. So there are candidates that we have gotten to know that we did not endorse, and we
Okay.
like take away the endorsement. So we're pretty sure by the time they get elected, like who they are, and that they're able to kind of, kind of do the work. And sometimes we have to call them and say, hey, like, I know everyone's in your ear, but like, this is important, right? So sometimes we have to have those conversations, but yeah, we're pretty sure about them and that they're going to be champions by the time they win.
Great. Okay. We've got several questions in the chat about women candidates and sort of this idea of how recruiting women candidates can feel a little bit different than recruiting men candidates. So could you sort of talk to us about that?
Yeah.
And then Aaron, I definitely want Aaron to come back on. So Aaron, we got some Arizona questions as well we want to get to.
Yeah. I mean, I think women candidates, there is something that I don't see in men, especially white men. Women have a worthiness thing, like I don't deserve to be in the space kind of thing. And so some of this is sort of you have to kind of get through their psychology of we'll have women candidates being like, being like, I don't know if I should even run for city council. Like, am I qualified? And then you'll have like men who are like, I'm going to run for the Senate as a first time candidate, like US Senate. Right. And so part of that is just having those conversations with women. And then the other piece is there are structural barriers that are just real about running for office. I was saying earlier, like, a lot of state houses don't pay full-time salary. And so financially it's just hard for women. And then the other piece is you have to like not get paid for a year. So financially, some people can't afford that. And then the other piece is, like you can't use childcare funds in a lot of states to like pay campaign funds to pay for childcare. So there's just a lot of considerations that I think women who tend to carry the burden of the family and the house and things like that, men don't always have to think about, that are a factor at play here. And it's just the schedule of campaigning does not make it easy for women to run. So I think some of those structural things need to change to really see a tipping point to have more women, run for office.
And obviously, as you have done this work, Emily, America has become more partisan, more divided. The rhetoric has really changed. I mean, we all know what the times that we're living in. How have you prepared your candidates to sort of take that head on?
I mean, I find that a lot of them have done like really hard things in their life. So they've served in Iraq, they're like, I've been shot at, like I can handle like what I mean? So I think that they've served in spaces that have been difficult and have tested their leadership. So they tend to be, able to handle this space. And I think they just have a North Star of like, I'm in this for service to country. And they sort of try to find common ground with people and navigate that space.
Yeah. And you did mention that, here's Aaron. Great. That you have a couple people just were not able to sort of handle it. So although they do have a background in something that's more challenging, more stressful, what happens to those people who just can't handle it?
I mean, we had a situation actually recently where one of our candidates did not make the ballot in Delaware. And it turns out that he was housing insecure. And so he could not provide an address to prove that he lived somewhere to get on the ballot. And so there are just real challenges that come up for people in life. And so they're, and we want him to run again and we're going to help him. There's nothing we could do. I mean, we wish he had come out. We wish he had asked us earlier to like help him figure this out. But like, there's a lot of shame around that, right? Around not having housing and things. So there are just life things that come up for people that they're just unable to be in the headspace and in the right place in their life to like run. And we mean that always for people. We're saying, look, this might not be the right time for you. It's okay. And like, there's going to be other opportunities in the future for you.
Right. And Aaron came back and then we lost him again.
Yeah, so I'm here. You hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, his internet went out. Yeah.
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 And I saw
Yeah.
Gail had a question, I think maybe piggybacking on what Emily was just saying there about
Yeah.
low salaries in state legislatures. I think it's absolutely, gets in the way of good people running for office here in Arizona. The salary is $24,000 a year, whether you're in the state house or the state senate. That's higher than some states, but lower than a lot of other states. I'm currently on the school board for Central Phoenix. That's all volunteer elected official job. We had a 25-year-old single mom that was on the board with me when I got started. She just resigned from the board and she couldn't afford to continue to do the work. So I think whether you're a school board member or state representative, I'd like to see, at least in the state house, us get closer to the median income of the state, which would be somewhere between like, $48,000, to $55,000 a year. And peg it to the median income of the state, which, most people in our state can afford to live off of. And at the school board level, school board members are just working for free all across the country. And I think that means the folks and the voices you need on the school boards are not running for school board or state house because they can't afford to take time away from their families to make sure there's food on the table for their families to do this public service.
Yeah. Aaron, we got a few more questions too, just about the state of the race in Arizona, which you have talked about. You're feeling confident you can flip the state house. Tell us a little bit more about what you're hearing on the doors, and have you heard a change in the people you're speaking to from since Harris has become the Democratic nominee?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was, I've been knocking on doors for, the last 6-8 months, mostly talking to Democratic primary voters. I was knocking on doors the night of the debate between President Biden and Donald Trump. And I think all through the spring and early summer, there's just a lot of anxiety and fear with every single person, that I met at the door. I would say since Vice President Harris became the nominee, there's a ton of excitement within the Democratic Party base. But I will say there's not a lot of persuadable folks left. I think this is going to come out to turnout and getting people to show up and vote. I think I think the example I used earlier of the dads, that not opened the doors and I was looking for their children in their early 20s. A lot of people have just already decided how they're going to vote, and there's nothing I can do to persuade somebody to vote the way I want them to vote. I think one of the things we're working really hard to do is making sure that people vote all the way down the ballot here in Arizona. We have some really critical races that, people in Arizona and maybe across the country are not thinking about. Our county recorder is the one that counts the votes. We had a very moderate Republican that was a county recorder. He just lost his primary to a very MAGA Republican, a state representative that is willing to, basically, the MAGA Republicans in Arizona. He's aligned himself with Donald Trump and Carrie Lake, who's running for U.S. Senate against my friend Ruben Gallego. The county recorder and the county supervisor in Arizona administer our elections. And if we're not making sure we have people that are honest and have integrity and willing to count the votes the right way, we're really in a dangerous place for the country. 4 years ago, the Republican Speaker of the House, refused to go along with Trump's plan to reverse the election results in the state legislature. So that's why the state legislature matters in Arizona, and why these county level races for Maricopa County, one of the 5th largest voting jurisdictions in the entire country, really, really matter to make sure we're electing. One of my friends is a guy named Tim Stringham that's running for county recorder guy I went to Afghanistan with. He's an Army JAG. He's running against, very MAGA Republican handpicked state representative. So these races matter. The excitement on the doors is really exciting. But at the end of the day, it's what can folks like you from all over the country do to help us in Arizona turn out the vote to elect pro-democracy candidates, pro-reproductive freedom candidates, and pro-education candidates.
How worried are you about election certification in Arizona, Aaron?
I would say that's the thing that scares me the most.
Okay.
I told you all earlier, I was in Afghanistan the night that I found out Trump was our commander in chief. And as a soldier, I could tell you right away, the rules of engagement became a lot more dangerous while I was serving with Trump as commander in chief. When I came home from Afghanistan, I think there was still part of me that wanted to, just accept that I disagreed with him on some policy things. But by the time we saw him lose the 2020 election, and we saw groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers take over the U.S. Capitol, and we can't call that anything but an insurrection and an attack on our democracy. I think that scares me the most, is the future of our democracy. And Trump is, at the very top of that MAGA movement. But we have folks like Mark Fincham, who just won a Republican primary, and he's coming back to the state legislature in Arizona. And we have, these county recorder candidates that are very, MAGA aligned. And I don't think we can trust them to conduct fair and honest elections based on their rhetoric.
We've got a few more questions, which are just really sort of identifying Arizona specific issues. One, a couple around climate issues, water. How are those issues resonating with Arizonans? And in particular, are you starting to see like the whole climate denialism break for some people, because you do have some real heat crises and water crises?
Yes. So I think I go back to my military service as sort of what informs my, view on climate change. During my part of my day job is I run a nonprofit organization here called Vets Forward. We organize veterans and military families across the state. We run a Veterans for Clean Energy program. So both knocking on doors, talking to voters, there's a lot of anxiety around what are we doing around climate change and water security in the desert. We know in the state legislature, any efforts to advance climate change policy get blocked. So Republicans with this 29-31 majority in the state House and 16-14 majority in the state Senate are really unwilling to do anything to advance climate change policy in Arizona. Another race in Arizona, we have the Arizona Corporation Commission race. That is a 5-person commission that's elected statewide to set energy policy in Arizona. And our energy companies in Arizona are still very much trying to maximize their profits to, whether it's oil and gas, rate increases for your utility rates going up, or maximizing the use of coal energy instead of moving towards things like wind and solar. And we have plenty of solar in Arizona, but our state does not even have a renewable energy standard. So I think Arizona voters are very concerned about these things. But until we flip the state House and the state Senate, we're unable to take action on these things. And I'd say this is another race that a lot of people aren't thinking about. It's called the Arizona Corporation Commission. That is actually the body in Arizona that would allow us to rein in our utilities that aren't ready to transition to clean energy, and also lower rates for Arizonans across the state, and pass something like a renewable energy standard for our state.
Yeah, you have a lot at stake for sure. Gail was just asking if the abortion ballot initiative is going to have like a potential sort of upswing and a down ballot lift for everyone. What's your sense of that from talking to folks?
Yes. I think that's I think that's going to help, just as much as having Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket. This abortion rights ballot initiative collected more signatures in the history of Arizona for any ballot initiative that we put on the ballot here. Sunday, after knocking on doors, I went to a postcard party, and we were working with the abortion rights ballot initiative to send those out to voters across the state. So there's lots of organizing efforts. And I think folks are trying to figure out, where do they put their volunteer energy? Do they put it into the Harris campaign? Do they put it into the state legislative races, or do they put it into the abortion rights ballot initiative? But I think there's going to be a lot of turnout based on abortion rights from everything I'm hearing at the doors.
We are so grateful to Emily and Aaron for both of you coming to BigTent, for your work. We are really hoping that Arizona is going to put you in the state legislature, and we see very bright things for your future, Aaron. So we will keep track of you for sure. And Emily, thank you so much for coming to BigTent, for all your work. And yeah, 48 days to go. Let's get this done, everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you,
All right.
Kitty. Appreciate
so
everybody. Thanks for
much.
joining. Thanks, Gail.
Bye,
and
everybody.
Sue. Bye.
Thank you so much.